So yes, today in all this whirlwind of training, I'm going to do this very quick Ask Janome HQ. And what are we going to talk about today? Well, we have had so many questions about, threading that is always a very hot button issue. Threading, and particularly why is my thread breaking? And sometimes we do have this terrible little instance of why is my bobbin holder not staying in position? Why is my bobbin holder spinning around inside the hook race here? And just a couple of little tips and tricks here, because it definitely can be a very aggravating issue. It's certainly not the norm, but sometimes, now here I'm on the fabulous, 6650, which Jennifer, you've had on the shopping channel, haven't you? Yes.
This is my old new favorite machine. So my new one's going to be this new one. But for every day, I love this machine.
So yes, it is a fabulous machine, and perfectly fine to show this demo where sometimes when you're sewing along, either regular sewing or, yes, when you, we've got our embroidery machines or embroidery combo machines, if you have a big thread jam, sometimes as you're sewing along and maybe your fabric gets punched down into the needle plate, or you're sewing along and maybe your thread gets wrapped around the spool pin, or you're embroidering, and again, maybe you get a jam and your thread jams. Sometimes what causes your bobbin holder to spin is, do you see this little metal finger there? That normally this little metal finger is nice and tight like that. Now you'll see there's a little notch on this metal plate that indicates like where our bobbin holder should be. And normally this little metal finger that my screwdriver is pressing against, that little metal finger is normally straight up into position, and it's under that little metal plate that has that little triangle on it. That's the way this little metal finger should be. And its job, sorry about that. Its job is to hold this bobbin holder in place. Now you'll see on the bobbin holder here, there's a little thumb right there. So that little thumb of the bobbin holder needs to be behind this metal finger. So that little metal finger, again, normally is in this position, straight up, and its job is to hold that little thumb that's on our bobbin holder in position, so it's not going to spin in the basket here, in the hook race. So, but sometimes if you have, again, maybe it's usually caused by a jam of some kind of your thread as you're going along, and you get this big jam and you're still trying to sew, you're still trying to embroider, and then all of a sudden your bobbin holder pushes past that thumb and it starts spinning. So naturally you panic, and then you definitely need to go to your Janome dealer and go to an authorized service technician to get that little finger there, that metal finger. You'll see now it's pushed out of position. It normally should not have any give to it. So this whole unit can be replaced so that finger is no longer springy. Again, this is really not good. I could probably use it in this case, and I purposely, don't tell anyone, I purposely did this so I could demo it. But Mark, our technician, assures me he'll fix it. So yes, you should normally get this replaced so that way this little finger is not moving at all, because again, it's designed to keep your bobbin holder in position. So that is the first thing. Get your technician to switch that out so that little finger is no longer, there's no give to that, so that's going to stop snap your bobbin in position. So, and again, when we're lining it up here, there's a little notch on your bobbin holder, and that notch needs to line up with this notch on the metal plate. And again, that little thumb on your bobbin holder needs to be behind that metal finger. But also when you're inserting your bobbin holder, in which case, oh, mine isn't quite level. Very often when I'm changing my bobbin holders, I like to just run my finger around like this, that I know, is it laying flat? Because here, it's in position. The little triangles are lined up. And then, yes, this little finger, the thumb is behind the finger. But then I see way over here, this bobbin holder is not laying flat. I definitely don't want to use it like that. It looks like it's in position, but ooh, there. I just snapped it back into place. It kind of clicked into place. But again, this finger, do you see how that little metal finger, it now snapped out of position entirely, and that is not good. It needs to go under this metal plate. So again, you gotta take the machine in and get it fixed by the authorized service technician. So that little finger is back into position to lock that bobbin holder into position. That's going to stop that bobbin holder from spinning. So that is definitely remedy number one. Then we have to decide determine how did the thread jam in the first place. So again, maybe when we were sewing along, maybe, sometimes if we've got the zigzag needle plate on, maybe the fabric was pushed down into the needle plate area. And perhaps, depending on our sewing application, maybe we could actually switch to our straight stitch needle plate that only has that center hole. So if we're, piecing a quilt, for example, maybe we don't need the zigzag needle plate. We can use the straight stitch needle plate instead. So then we don't have to worry about the fabric being pushed down in that zigzag needle plate. Or again, another cause to create that fabric being pushed down is needles. Definitely you need to change your needles. Oh, I love having an assistant. Oh, I thank you, Jennifer. It's so wonderful because needles, yes, we need to change our needles. Now, again, recommended every 8 to 10 hours. It really depends on your application. Overall, your needle is the least expensive part of your project. So when in doubt, I say throw it out, get a new needle. Again, our red tip or our blue tip or the purple tip needles are 3 most commonly used Janome needles, again, available from any Janome dealer. Really great to keep a lot of these on hand just in case. And when in doubt, again, if you find your fabric is being pushed down into this zigzag needle plate, chances are you have a dull needle. So go ahead and change out your needle. For regular sewing, I use these Janome size 14 red tip needles with that nice sharp point. The majority of the time for my sewing, they work out so well. Again, if I'm doing some cotton knits or even some embroidery, then we recommend our blue tip size 11 needle. And especially with embroidery, when we're going through like the stabilizer and the fabric and all that extra thread, again, the needles will dull more readily going through all those extra layers. Certainly if we're quilting a lot and going through, again, extra layers, your needle is going to dull more. So definitely switch it out more. Speaking of quilting, yes, we always recommend free motion quilting, ruler quilting, this Janome purple tip, size 14, with that larger eye, but with that cobra head, that flared head that helps separate the fibers of the fabric so the needle thread and the bobbin thread intersect more readily in the center of the fabric, helps eliminate those skip stitches and eyelashing. So we always love these purple tip needles. And again, when in doubt, we don't want to throw anything away if we don't need to, but when in doubt, just throw out the needle and get a new needle. That will definitely help a lot of your stitching woes. Now also, again, to prevent any of these thread jams that may cause some trouble in your bobbin area, what size spool and spool cap definitely can make a big difference. Again, we want to use the correct size spool cap. So then our spool of thread or a big cone of thread is not going to get wrapped around the spool pin, whether it's a vertical orientation or a horizontal orientation. So the correct spool cap can definitely make a big difference. For example, on this spool of Janome embroidery thread here, this is the metallic thread, I would use this large spool cap. And this large spool cap comes with pretty much every Janome machine. And we want the spool cap bigger than the actual spool, because then, as you'll see, the thread comes off and it's kept away from the spool pin. So it's going to come off very easily and not get wrapped around the spool pin that would be in the middle here. For a cone such as this is one of the mini king cones of the iris polyester embroidery thread. We could use maybe the special spool cap that comes included in many Janome machines. And when we use these special spool caps, I sometimes see this like a little crown. It really should be this way in the actual spool or the cone. In this case, this cone doesn't quite fit, because that spool cap should go all the way in. So in this case, this mini king spool, I would use, this medium size spool cap. So again, our thread is going to come around. And again, the spool pin, which would be in the middle here, again, this spool cap is keeping that thread from wrapping around that spool pin. So very easy, anything to avoid those threading woes, no problem. So simple, easy to use. Things like these big arrow quilt Madeira threads. Again, Janome Canada is distributor of these fabulous threads, so you can get these from your Janome dealer. For a big cone like this, well, we're probably not going to use a spool cap at all, because then, again, that spool pin is going to be well down in this cone. We don't need to worry about it at all. Oh, Selena's here. Hello. It's wonderful to see you. Now, again, when we have machines like, the 6650, we've got those vertical spool pins. But again, all of these tips would apply to the horizontal spool pins as well. So let's go around here and we'll see that, oh yes, can I do this? This sophisticated camera work. There we go. So again, as I'm putting my embroidery thread here, and then again, I've got my bigger spool cap. So there, again, that thread is not going to wrap around this spool pin at all. So that's definitely going to help prevent any thread from getting caught. But also, some of these metallic threads, monofilament threads, any of these kind of tricky or finicky threads, as I call them, we also have these thread nets that are often included in machines, or then you can purchase these in a blister pack from your Janome dealer. And we're just going to take our spool of thread here and wrap this thread net around it. And we're going to kind of tuck it in under the spool there, like that, and then put this down on our spool pin. So the thread net helps prevent the thread from sometimes pooling around the bottom of the spool, and that will definitely, if that thread pools around the bottom of the spool, that will definitely eventually snag around the spool pin, and that's what's going to cause that thread jam, and you're going to be, pedal to the metal trying to get your machine to sew, and then that's when you potentially could bypass that little metal finger, and your bobbin holder is going to jump out of place. Particularly when we're embroidering, and again, the super high speed of our embroidery machines, and again, you can pull that bobbin holder out of position. So by using the thread net, so simple, but again, that's going to stop the thread from pooling around the bottom of the spool, so it's not going to get wrapped around the spool pin. So that will definitely help. Now, I also do little things like, to reduce the depth of that spool pin, I'll take the big spool cap like this. And again, then this applies for vertical spool pins or horizontal spool pins. Then I will do that. So again, it reduces the depth of that spool pin. Then I would cap this with another big spool cap, but then again, that way then you've eliminated that spool pin. So then thread is not going to wrap around that spool pin. So that's typically where, if you get those big thread jams, maybe thread, the first place I look for, maybe thread has wrapped around the spool pin. So by doing these little tips and tricks, you will help prevent that from happening. Now, also little tips and tricks you can do, though, is, I know, sophisticated camera work.
Let me do it.
Go ahead. Is just, these beautiful spool, is these beautiful thread stands that, yes, we've got the spool stands that will attach to the back of many Janome machines. We've got either the 5-thread or the 2-thread. Now, this will definitely help because with our 5-thread, again, perfect for embroidery, that, yes, we can raise up our telescoping thread stand here. And again, then we've got the extra spool pins, and we've got the cone adapters here. So again, any size spool or cone you want to use. And again, this is how I will do often these smaller spools, those metallic threads that are again a little more challenging to use. Then I eliminate that spool pin just by inverting that spool cap there. Or again, the thread net with these metallic threads, so it's preventing that thread from pooling around there. And by using the spool stand, then we've got more distance for the thread to come up to the guide, and then as it comes down to your machine. So then those difficult to use threads, traditionally difficult to use, get much easier to use because then they uncurl and relax a little more by having more distance then to come up and then through the guides and then down to your machine. The spool stands also come with a little thread guide as well that will often be at the top of your machine, and there's various guides that will fit into the tops of the various machines. So double check with your Janome dealer on which spool stand is correct for your machine. But again, these little thread guides will help then get the thread to your tensions and to your needle, but then by having this extra space here, again, they relax and uncurl a little more, so then you'll have less trouble when they hit the thread tension.
Sandra's saying thanks for all of these great tips.
Oh, lovely.
And is it Lucia?
Oh, Luciano.
Yes. He was in our homemade event also.
Yes.
He says, I love the 5-thread spool stand, which is mounted to the machine handle. He loves that.
Yes, and that's a great tip too. Now you'll see that they do have screw holes, and the screws are actually in the back of your machine. So double check if they're compatible with your machine, and you'll see there's holes for the screws. But yes, the handles, like of my 550E and my 15,000, I don't even screw it into the back of the machine. I just clip it over the handle, and that's fine. I can remove it whenever I need to. So very easy to use. And again, available from your Janome dealer. Again, that will help you with some of that threading woes, so you're not going to get those jams creating any trouble in your bobbin area. So hopefully those little tips and tricks will help you. Thank you to Jennifer Tryon for her fabulous camera assistance. Yes, it's wonderful. Oh, I remember the days when Tanya was here to help me. It was wonderful.
It's always great to have someone
yes,
with the camera.
I love to have all this company.
Karen saying great info as always.
Oh, wonderful.
I know. Annie just joined, but she can watch it back.
Yes, exactly. That if you're joining late, you can always go back to the IGTV icon on the Janome HQ YouTube or Janome HQ Instagram page. And then, yes, I'm going to load this as a video on the Janome HQ YouTube channel, so you can watch it there too.
Yippee! Oh, Joan, you rock too.
Oh, yay. Wonderful. So, yes, thank you everyone for joining me today or joining us today from the Janome Sewing and Learning Center. And, next week, I am not going to be here live. I'm working on a very special project, and you'll see why soon. But yeah, so next week I won't be here live, but the following week, then yes, absolutely, we'll be in time for a magical machine mystery tour. But you can always check on IGTV and, of course, the Janome HQ YouTube channel for more tips and tricks. Lovely. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. Bye.